Hi, I just want to welcome you to my Periscope as I bring you in to some teaching and equipping that I did with my online mentoring group. I actually did it on Facebook yesterday. I just brought everybody in to what I was doing. I thought I should bring this to Periscope and not so that you don't miss out as well. So I'm going to give you some time to actually hop on board, let us know your name, let us know where you're from, as well as give you a few announcements of some things that are coming up. Now, first of all, I want to make sure that you got my new book, Glory Carriers. Hopefully you can see it. I can't tell what the lighting looks like here. Make sure that you get this book. I am hearing so many testimonies. This is going to take you deep, and it's going to take you on the journey that you need to go on with the Holy Spirit. A lot of people, they want to walk in signs and wonders. They're frustrated. It's not happening, and that's because they don't understand that it's birthed out of relationship with the Spirit of God. So that book is going to take you on that journey, and it's going to awaken a whole new realm of glory in your life. And you too, this is what I want to tell you, is you too can become a glory carrier. My interview with Sid Roth, I got the dates a little while ago. It's going to be on May 20th. So for those of you who are asking about that, stay tuned. May 20th is the date. What do I have coming up? Well, I've been doing an online mentorship all year long, and I love this mentorship because some of the people on the online mentorship, I've been able to meet them in person. They've come into the institutes. It's just been this really fascinating group and community that's been growing, and it ends in the month of May, but I'm going to restart it in June, going from June through May. Online mentorship, and I'm going to start posting all the links and how to get into that and everything. Going to be different topics. For those of you who are with me this year, we're going to do different topics, but we're going to do like 2 weeks where you can get the whole year at only like $300. That would be less than $30 a month if you kind of put a calculator to it. But then you'll be able to either pay a lump sum for the whole year, or you could do it monthly. You could just do it monthly, $30 a month. But I believe in training and equipping. It's one of my passions, and I've been trying to find the best mechanisms to do that. And I found that the combination of coming online and on campus has been bringing people into new places and new realms of ministry. And I love what I'm seeing. I'm seeing people actually writing books and writing for the Elijah List and pastoring and ministry. And I'm starting to see this nice groove of fruit that's been coming through some of these trainings that I've been putting on, in addition to the other sources that people have been resourced with. There's lots of good trainers and equippers out there, but this is what I'm doing beginning again in June. Now, I will be in Tampa, Florida, looking at the dates here. Let me give you the exact dates. I will be in Tampa, Florida for the Revive Tampa Conference. That's a women's conference with Revive Church, and that is going to be May 17th and 18th. And let me back up into April. Sorry, I forgot. I'll be at the Marvel Dallas Conference as well. That's the 25th through the 27th, I believe, give or take a day. Go to marveldallas.org. And then if you're in Australia, I'll be with the Byron Bay tribe over in that area, and I'll be doing the School of Freedom and Breakthrough May 9th through 11th. So I'd love to see you there, okay? All right, so just a couple things I have coming up, and then I got a bunch of stuff in the summer. I'm not even going to go there right now, but I do want to make sure you get this book, Glory Carriers. It's going to take you places. I'm just hearing so much about it, and that's really what my heart has been, that it take you into an encounter. Okay, so just going to give you a snippet of what I gave the online group, because right now we're working through supernatural finances, and in doing that kind of topic, it was really important to me that we be well grounded in the Word, because I've seen supernatural finances. I've seen crazy stuff financially. I remember the one year we decided to remodel our building. This is several years ago. We decided to remodel our building. It hadn't been touched since the 50s, and my husband and I, we inherited this building at a very young age, and my husband just went after it. He's like, we have got to remodel this place. And seeing a church come together and make deep sacrifices financially to see this building come to a place that it was functional and it was aesthetic. And because buildings, we need buildings for the use of training and equipping disciples so that we can send them out, and it needs to have have what it needs to have. It needs to be aesthetic. It needs to be a good looking, functional place. And so, and our building hadn't been touched since the 50s. Can you believe that? So I remember all the deep sacrifices. And that was a year we saw three families in our church. They had their mortgages supernaturally wiped away. I've never seen anything like that. And we saw three. And I remember seeing one lady, she had her car mortgage wiped away supernaturally, and a whole bunch of other stuff like that. It was crazy. I'm telling you, there is such a thing as supernatural finances, but we also need to be people well grounded in the Word of God when it comes to financial blessing and that kind of thing. And so anyway, I want to read you some scriptures, Philippians 4:19. And this same God who takes care of me will supply all your needs from his glorious riches, which have been given to us in Christ Jesus. Proverbs 10:22. Somebody can actually write these in if you want. Proverbs 10:22. The blessing of the Lord makes a person rich, and he adds no sorrow with it. 2 Corinthians 9:8. And God will generously provide all you need. Then you'll always have everything you need and plenty left over to share with others. Jeremiah 17:7-8. But blessed are those who trust in the Lord and have made the Lord their hope and confidence. They are like trees planted along a riverbank with roots that reach deep into the water. Such trees are not bothered by the heat or worried by long months of drought. Their leaves stay green and they never stop producing fruit. Okay, so those are some promises that the Lord has for us in regards to finances and wealth. And we just looked through the Bible and we looked at when God supplies, he supplies. Okay, so it's not an issue of God not supplying, not being willing to supply, but a lot of times we just don't. There's a lot of reasons why we are disconnected to the supplier, Jehovah Jireh. We're disconnected to him. A lot of reasons. A lot of times we take matters into our own hands and we don't bring God into it, and we suffer the consequences. And he's saying, I will supply for you, but there is a roadway to do that. And first thing I want to make very, very clear to you is that all money has a spirit on it. I don't know if you knew that, but all money has a spirit on it. Think about that. It has a spirit on it. And we look at Matthew 6:24, and Jesus said, no one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. Okay, so what are we looking at here? When it comes to money, you're either going to serve God with it or you're going to serve mammon with it. Mammon is actually a deity. Mammon is actually a spirit. Your money has a spirit on it. Either has the spirit of mammon on it or has the spirit of God on it. And so it's interesting, when it has the Spirit of God on it, your money is blessed. And you say, well, how do I get the Spirit of God on my money? The minute you tithe, the Spirit of God comes on your money and your money is blessed, okay? And that's a whole teaching in itself. But I learned all of this from Robert Morris. He teaches a series called The Blessed Life. There's a book and there's a YouTube series if you want to check it out. But he's the one who really, I learned that from, that all money has a spirit. All money has a spirit on it. And the way you get the Spirit of God on your money is you give the first 10%, which is the tithe, to the house of God. Okay, and so the church is the designated receiver on earth for the tithe. The tithe actually belongs to the Lord. That's Malachi chapter 3. It belongs to God. A lot of us think that the tithe belongs to you. It does not. It belongs to God. That's his. That's why in Malachi 3, when he began to challenge his people about stealing the tithes, he says, you've robbed me. Okay, he didn't say you robbed the church, even though back then the tithes went to the temple. These days they go to the church. And the tithes go to your church. Your tithes don't go to other ministries or paraministries, or your tithes and offerings are completely different. Those are separate things. Your tithes go to your church. So the Bible says so that there be food in the house. Okay, and so and when we don't bring the tithes to the church, actually the Lord, it says it somehow, some way it comes before him, and he calculates it, and he's like, well, you've robbed me when you've stolen my tithes. And really it's a heart issue is what he says in Malachi 3. It's really not about money, it's about the heart. He says, if you return to me with all your heart, you will restore the tithe. And so, and the Proverbs says that where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So it's really a heart issue. But the tithe brings God's blessing and redemption on the rest of your money, and it protects it from the spirit of mammon. Did you know that? See, once you tithe, your money can't be devoured by the devourer because God's spirit is on it. Your money is then blessed, and it has the ability to multiply. And if you look through through the Bible, you see where there is patterns of multiplication, where things that you only have a few of suddenly become many supernaturally. Don't you want that in your life? Now, again, I want to go back to this whole concept. Have you ever considered that money carries a spirit on it? I've actually felt and discerned the spirit on money now and again, sensing the blessing of God on it, sensing the filth of mammon on it. I remember one man came to the church, him and his families, they're brand new to the church, and I remember he came up to the prayer line. All it is, I shook his hand just to say hello, and I just reached out and I could feel money in his hand. There wasn't any money in his hand, but I could feel money in his hand. You said, what do you mean you felt money in his hand? I supernaturally felt money in his hand. It was so strong, I took my hand away and I grabbed his hand again. And he was spirit-filled enough that he knew something was happening. It wasn't crazy to him. And I said, there's money in your hand. I can feel it. He said, okay. And this man was a tither. This man, was a giver. And that week, he actually got a business deal that came through with his cows and his dairies that came through that he'd been waiting on for a long time. See, it had already been taken care of in the spiritual realm, and I actually felt what already had been done, that his money had just been multiplied. I could feel it in his hand. And sure enough, that week it showed up in the natural. You can feel the spirit on money. You can feel when God's spirit's on money, because that money is going to multiply. Okay, and so when you say, well, what is the spirit of mammon? Is that really true? I mean, Jesus mentions it. It sure is. That's actually rooted in, it's actually a Chaldean Syrian word, and it means wealth or riches. It's also the name of the god of riches. The spirit of mammon has its roots in Babylon, and Babylon came into existence with the incident of the Tower of Babel, and you can read about that in Genesis 11. And, basically this is where they decided to build a tower out of arrogance and pride. They wanted to be their own god. And if you read into it's more historical account in Josephus, basically what happened is Nimrod, this guy named Nimrod, what a name, he was upset with God for flooding the earth, and he wanted to build a tower, to escape God's wrath should it ever happen again, not trusting in the promise of God, but literally taking matters into his own hands. But God looked at what they were doing and saw that they had united, and when people unite, you can't stop them. And so he confused their language to stop that plan, and that's when they spread to all the ends of the earth with different languages. And so Babylon is rooted in confusion. The Tower of Babel is rooted in confusion. Babylon is historically known for its pride. It's known for its idolatry, its cruelty, and it's prophetically known to become an economic stronghold in the earth in the end times. Okay, so money in itself is not evil. The Bible instructs us that the love of money is the root of evil. So it's the love of money. Where is my heart when it comes to money? That's where the problem is. It's the love of money that causes people to subject themselves to the evil principality of mammon, either knowingly or unknowingly. And guess what? Jesus said you can't serve God and mammon. That's because mammon is looking for devotees. It's looking for people to serve it. It's looking for a congregation, okay? It promises you pride, identity, security, influence, power for perfect devotion, but it forbids your devotion to Jesus Christ. This spirit is a great intimidator of Christians. It tells them to not be generous. It tells them to not to give. It tells them that they don't have enough. And those who follow the dictates of mammon, however, they eventually receive a visit from this deity, and it demands payment from its followers in one way or another, and it is a destroyer. Now let me tell you this really crazy story, okay? You can find this story in the book called Radical Riches by Bishop Dave Williams, and I copied this story in my book, Seeing the Supernatural. And basically this missionary in South America, he was ministering to this village, and in this village there was a deity that a lot of the young people would give a vow to. They would make a vow and join their spirit, bind their spirit and soul to this deity in exchange for what? In exchange for wealth. It was a spirit of mammon, probably had a different name, but it was essentially a spirit of mammon, and they would make this vow to this spirit, and sure enough, what would happen is they would start accumulating wealth demonically, okay? And they start driving the fancy cars and wearing the fancy clothes and getting all arrogant. And it seemed to me that what I read here was that they were blinded to their fate, though. For some reason, they were blinded to their fate. And so Sure enough, what would happen in this particular village, between the ages of 40 and 45, this happened every single time, but the people were blinded to it when they made the vow. It's like they never calculated, never could see that this was going to be their fate, even though it happened every single time to every person who made that vow to that deity. Between the ages of 40 and 45, they begin to swell up in unbearable pain, horrendous pain. Their body literally began to swell until their body exploded open and worms came out of their body. It's that serious, okay? And this is basically where, we're coining this phrase that Mammon always comes to collect. It always comes for a payment. Mammon tries to tear down the church by destroying its economy. In America, we had the Y2K. Conspiracy. We had the whole economic recession because of what happened with the real estate industry and the banking industry. What was that fueled by? That was fueled by the spirit of Mammon to tear down the economy of the church. It's amazing to me how many people, when they get afraid that they're not going to have enough, that they stop tithing. They forget that God is more than enough and he'll take care of you in famine. And they begin to align to Mammon and they begin to lose everything. And so this spirit tries to tear down the church by destroying its economy, because money in the hands of God's people actually translates into souls. It takes money to reach people. It takes money for missions. It takes money for outreach. It takes money for evangelism. And so this spirit tries to work overtime to bind churches financially. You can hear the spirit talking every time, there's an offering, okay? It says things like, all that preacher wants is your money, or you better not give. You're not going to have enough for yourself. It creates all these theological lies, to convince you not to give your tithes. It says it's just Old Testament. Really, the tithes are pre-law, in the law, and after the law. It's all through the Bible. And my thing is, if you try to use the Bible to not give to your church, something's wrong with you. That's a heart issue, okay? It says things like, well, the pastor's going to use that money for their own personal gain. Let me tell you something. The pastor takes the tithes and uses it misappropriates the tithes. They come under a curse because they're robbing God. So the tithes are very, very sacred. There was a church that I know about. Let me tell you about a church I know about. They had really good checks and balances when they received their offerings, but there was someone on the inside that was stealing. They discovered that somebody was stealing part of the tithes and the offerings, and so they're doing everything to try to figure out and flush out where the thief was from, or where the thief was operating, and they couldn't figure it out. And so they prayed, because they know the principle in Malachi 3: if you take the tithes, you come under a curse. And they knew that the person would be exposed, because the principle is there. You steal the tithes, you come under a curse. And sure enough, one of the ushers within just a few months, let me tell you what happened. One of the ushers, the entire household fell apart due to drugs and jail and theft, prostitution, adultery, rebellion, divorce, and through that they knew who was stealing the tithes. And that usher's household never did come back under restoration. Now, when you give the tithes, let me explain something. When you give the tithes you give first. You don't give it last. You don't give it in a little while. You give it first. Number one, because God is first. Number two, when you give the tithes first, all the rest of your money comes under the blessing of God. If you wait till you pay all the bills and you do everything else and you give the tithes last, all the money that preceded that is not blessed. You want to give the tithes first thing. I know for myself, we give our tithes, the last week of the month, the last day of the month, we give our tithes for the upcoming month. We just do it on our credit card, but we give it to the church upcoming month, because we want to have our tithes in first, okay? Because you put your tithes in first, everything else comes under that blessing. And so this is the whole thing about tithes. When there is all your money has a spirit on it. And if you can get that, you will understand why it's so important, to bring your money under the blessing of God, because it has a spirit on it. And Mammon, if you follow the dictates of Mammon always comes to collect, but Mammon is a destroyer. And so I just want to encourage you with that. That was just one little snippet of the things that we're talking about in our online mentorship, the one that I'm going to restart in January. And I was giving them the foundation, the spiritual components behind money, because I'm going to teach them how to receive supernatural finances and receive supernatural multiplication in our coming weeks, because God does crazy things financially for you, because when your money's blessed, it multiplies. All right, thanks so much. God bless. Thanks for joining me. Have a good day.